Patrol uses an activation counter chip pull system. For every soldier in play, there is a corresponding activation counter. At the start of each turn, these activation counters are collected by the owning player. From these counters, a player may randomly draw a number of counters to place into their player's pool. The number of counters that may be selected is based on the quality of the unit involved. These go anything from untrained all the way up to elite, with obviously elite being allowed to draw far more counters. You only really want to draw counters when you're playing a large scenario or there's a very strong tactical reason for you to do so. It's usually best to not select any and put all your activation counters into the activation pool. You add your counters in there, your opponent adds their counters in there, and they are shuffled. Each turn of Combat Patrol is divided into a number of action phases, and each action phase begins with action determination. A single counter is drawn from the action pool and revealed to both players. In this case, we have Private Young. This is a green counter, so we know that the Americans are the active team and the American player is the active player. This activation counter is then placed face down in the US players pool. The American player is therefore the active player, and the active player has several options. One of the options is to play a counter from the player's pool. In this example, we only have one counter currently in the player's pool, but we could have several. We could play a counter by turning it over and revealing it. In this case, Private Young. Private Young is here in the trees, and by playing his activation counter, Private Young is activated and he can take one action, such as move, fire, throw a grenade or prepare another action. He also has the option of trying for an additional action, therefore giving Private Young two actions. To do this, he uses his initiative rating of 3 and takes an initiative test. If he passes the initiative test, Private Young will have two actions to use. If he fails his initiative test, then Private Young cannot act at all and is marked with a no further action counter. So therefore this is quite a risky strategy and only really worth it if you've got high initiative troops or the situation demands you take a risk. The second option an active player has that he can do before, after or instead of playing an activation counter is to issue some commands. If you look at the squad leader on the board, in this case it's Sergeant Clark, and this blue number is his command rating. So Sergeant Clark has a command rating of 3. That allows him to issue 3 commands each turn. He can attempt to issue commands any time that the US are the active players. Because Sergeant Clark has a command rating of 3, he issue a command automatically to any soldier which he can trace a path of 3 hexes or less. Can't trace it through a wall, but through windows and doors as if movement would be fine. So 1, 2, he could automatically issue a command to Garcia, which would then give Garcia an action to perform. 1, 2, 3 can also pass that on to Harris. If a soldier's in his line of sight, which we trace across here, you can double that. So we could actually issue a command to anyone within 6 hexes in his line of sight. If a soldier is not within Sergeant Clark's command range, then he can still try and issue a command, but it might not be automatic. For every hex area beyond the range, you roll a d6. And if a 6 is rolled, that command is expended but not received. Say for instance Sergeant Clark wants to issue a command to Private Young. Private Young is not in his line of sight, so therefore he cannot double his command rating. So his command rating is 3. We trace a path to Young, 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is one more than 3, so to try and issue a command to Young, he'd have to roll a dice. Any result other than 6 means the command is received and Private Young gains an action. If he tries to issue a command to Parker over here, again, not in his line of sight. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's 3 in excess of his command rating of 3. He'd roll 3 dice. Any 6 means the command would not be issued. Okay, so in this case, no 6s are rolled, so Parker would receive the command. When you're an active player, the US, in this instance, can try and issue all the commands at one time, issue as many or as few as they want. You can issue it before playing an activation counter, instead of playing an activation counter, after playing an activation counter. When you're active, you can play them at any point. If, for instance, he tried to issue a command to Parker and Parker did roll a 6, one of his 3 dice was a 6, the command counter is still used up, but Parker does not receive it. Okay? He could then try again. Okay, Sergeant Clark could shout a bit louder and try and get his attention. And again, roll the dice, another 6, it would be not successful, but if he doesn't roll any 6s, then Parker will receive the commands. Okay. The final option the US player has of activating a soldier is by use of orders. Orders represent plans that a squad had made before a prepared event. So you're only going to see orders appear in scenarios where there are planned assaults or planned actions. You will not come across them in engagement actions. So to issue an order, a soldier must be more than twice the command radius away from the squad leader. So Parker, in this case, if we moved him here, Sergeant Clark tries to trace a line to him. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, has to come through the window 6, 7, or this way 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, actually there's a wall there, so you'd have to go all the way around there. So Parker's beyond Sergeant Clark, therefore he could issue an order, which means Parker is going to use a prepared plan or prepared move that they've spoken about before. And they are the different types of activating a unit in combat patrol.